week 3, and what we're going to be looking at this week are a few things here. We're looking at chemical, biological, and radiological weapons. So there's a lot of information to go through in this particular lecture. And again, I'm just giving you a snapshot version of what we have in our readings, as well as some of the main areas of each of these 3 types of different weapons that we have to look at this particular week. One of the things we have to understand prior to looking at chemical or radiological or any type of device for that matter is the definition of terrorism. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has defined terrorism as the unlawful use of force or violence committed by a group or individual against persons or property to intimidate or course of government, the civilian populations, or any segment thereof, in furtherance of political or social objectives. Basically, let me put it to you this way after that long definition, because any alphabet police, FBI, CIA, etc., any FBI definition of terrorism is going to be quite long. So basically what it's saying is that groups of people or individuals are going to try and cause mayhem and make lives miserable. Okay, that's what that definition is right there. And what they want to do is make sure that there's political and social unrest in order to overthrow a government. That is what terrorists are looking to do. All the time, they're looking for their agenda, looking to perhaps overthrow that government that does not go along with their particular agenda, and then try and be in charge and create their own social initiatives and their own social objectives. In looking at classifications of weapons, these are just a few that I'd like to mention to you in our readings here. So you have an explosive device, an incendiary device, and a biological device. So the explosive device, well, I know this is going to sound really strange to you, but the explosive device is made to explode. That's what the explosive device is exactly. That's my 1980s moment. Duh. Yes, that's the reason why they use an explosive device, is to explode. So the incendiary device normally is going to be with a fuse, an ignition piece, as well as being able to create combustion. So once it's lit, then it's able to put out that fire and cause burns or whatever it may be. And then you have the biological device. Well, we can see whether it's true or not. I'm just putting it out there. I'm not being politically correct or politically inadept. I'm just letting you know what's been out there and talked about, that possibly COVID could be a biological weapon. So we have to keep that in mind as we continue to move forward with COVID and our safety issues. Anthrax, smallpox, plague, etc. All of these things can be used as biological weapons and causing havoc and health havoc for the human population. Further weapons classifications are dealing with chemical, biological, and radiological. So how are they impacting us? Well, they simply are in the air that is breathed, and it's also in our drinking water, and it's also the surface contact that we have. We talked about in the last lesson regarding radiological devices and some of the fears, as well as some of the things that can happen with a radiological device. And that has the surface contact here. So if you are exposed to a radiological device, some of the fallout from that radiological device will definitely be on your skin, and that's part of the surface contact. Or it might be on windowsills or buildings or whatever it may be, but that radiological dust then has a lot of impact upon health as well as your exposure. In looking at the chemical, well, it's a rapid onset of symptoms as far as your health is concerned. You will see that it'll be almost immediately, because let's face it, if you have a chemical that is going to be sprayed upon you, or if it's in an aerosol form, or if it's in the air and traveling, more than likely if you inhale it, you're going to know that there's going to be some signs and symptoms at a rapid onset. Biological, well, we could see from COVID, we could see from plagues, we could see from a variety of hosts that are out there, that this will take days or perhaps weeks to even surface. And it's going to take a little bit of time before those signs and symptoms are going to appear. And finally, then, the radiological device, again, it may take days or weeks to surface. Now, on the other hand, if you're within the close proximity of that radiological device or that radiological detonation, immediate burns will definitely be there, and that's obviously part of the signs and symptoms there. But we have to understand that the nausea, the vomiting, the loss of hair, the loss of hearing, at sight, etc., may be associated with that radiological device, depending on the potency of that particular device being detonated. So keep this all in mind as far as chemical, biological, and radiological devices. In following up with radiological devices and dealing with nuclear weapons, there's three different types of radiation that's out there. You have the alpha, the beta, and the gamma. And the first one dealing with it, alpha, these are the heaviest particles and they travel the least. So basically they're there and they fall down to the ground. Now, on the other hand, the beta particles are a little bit smaller particles. They travel faster and then they go through tissue, obviously causing more health issues and creating more suspect health issues in the weeks and months to come, should you be exposed. And then finally, the gamma, then it impacts all humans, and then you have dermal burns. So that is going to be the worst of the radiation doses that can occur to you, as well as being something to be well aware of, that is limited protection out there against gamma. If most instances, one gamma radiation is out there, is definitely going to cause a high level of exposure, a high level of incidence rates as far as health is concerned, as well as probably imminent death being exposed to this. So we can see that there's three different levels. Be aware that each level has its own health risks, as well as probably imminent death as far as gamma radiation is concerned. So should you be involved in any of these incidents? Well, once again, we were talking about evacuation in the previous lesson. Well, we need to pick up on that again, because these are different types of devices that can be imminently causing health issues as well as harm. So in looking at that, exit access, stairs, building spaces, and enclosed ramps. These are all things that you can utilize for your means of egress should there be a chemical attack or radiological attack, whatever it may be. The exit, well, the exit doors with fire resistance and in passageways, if you happen to have the shelter in place, that might be a good place of doing it. Perhaps in a stairwell, if there was a device that had been detonated. And the reason why I say that is not because, okay, well, you're trapped in the stairwell and you have chemicals that are outside. Well, if the chemicals happen to be outside and you're within concrete and cement and a lot of these forms that are there, steel forms, there's a less likelihood that you're going to be impacted by this. And plus, if it's an aerosol and traveling, it's probably not going to be able to make it in there as potent as it would in an open office space area. Again, you're going to have to judge for yourselves when you're in that type of situation. Hopefully you'll never be in that situation, but what I'm saying is that, if you happen in that situation, understand that there's a lot of protection inside those stairwells. And then exit discharge. Well, basically these are pathways to the exits within the building to the nearest exit underground, as far as a means of egress is concerned. And what I'm talking about here, so I know you're saying like, but Dr. Mylan, so it sounds like there's an exit to get to an exit, so this way we can exit to the other exit, so this way we're exiting the building. Pretty much, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. But these are underground, and these are kind of like what they refer to as tunnels in these pathways. So if you happen to go on the stairs as exit number 1, then you get downstairs, it leads into those tunnels. That's exit number 2, and the tunnels lead you to outside. Much like the tunnels used to be at the White House and underneath the Capitol building for Congress to have a means of egress in the event that there was a nuclear attack, or if there happened to be a threat at either of those two buildings, then they would be able to egress from another location, from underground and all the tunnels that used to be there. So these are some of the things that you can use as far as evacuation is concerned. And we see those evacuation factors too come into play. And it's going to depend. My two favorite words are it depends, as you will soon see in a lot of these lectures, but it depends on the nature of the disaster or emergency. If you have the potential threat to occupant safety, well, then you need to have a means of egress and evacuate the building, especially if there's a bomb threat. Now you have to keep in mind too that in the event of evacuation, you are going to have to look outside to see if there are any other threats, because oftentimes when there happens to be a terrorist threat, many times they want the people to evacuate the building to cause harm to the people that are evacuating the building. So you have to look around and you have to be safe when you're in the evacuation mode. Some people choose to shelter in place. That's their choice, but some people are leaving the building and ready to evacuate. In an active threat or active shooter situation, for example, most times police and emergency personnel are going to be there to escort people out of the building. However, if that's not the case, then you have to make that choice whether you're going to shelter in place, evacuate the building, or whatever means necessary in order to stay alive. And that's exactly what happens. So each of these factors, it's going to determine on the immediacy of the evacuation. Again, it depends on the disaster, and it depends on the type of emergency. And now on to suspected bombs. Well, we talked about that in the last lecture as well. However, in looking at it, you could choose to ignore the threat, order an immediate or total evacuation, or search and evacuate if necessary. Now, my humble suggestion is allow the professionals that are out there to search and evacuate where necessary. I would not go around looking to see if there was a bomb or a device that may be left in an office area, etc. If there is a suspected bomb in the area there and you've received a phone call, or if there happens to be a threat, my humble suggestion to you would be to notify the correct people inside the building and make sure that you leave as soon as possible. Allow the professionals out there to look for the device or devices that may be located inside the building, and it may take an extreme amount of time for them to locate those devices in an effort to ensure that the building is clear and ensure that the building is truly going to be safe. It may take 3 days in order to do so because of the severity of the threat. So just keep that in mind during the time of evacuation and the return to normalcy for working purposes. Once you have evacuated the building, you have the opportunity here to have roll call. And basically what that is perform a designated head count, or what I refer to as an occupant list. So if everybody is outside, then you have the proper number of people. Or if it's a meeting place or a location, then you know for sure that everybody is there. Again, there are rare occurrences where people just walk away. They might go to their cars. They may make phone calls. They may leave and not tell you and smoke a cigarette, as I mentioned in the previous lecture. But understand that a roll call method is good, or having a head count. So this way you have a checklist of all the people that perhaps are in your department or within that particular jurisdiction that you're working alongside. So this way you can make an adequate report to the police to make sure that everyone has been indeed evacuated and there's an evacuation confirmation for all the people there. And then search method. Then allow the appropriate agency to re-enter the building in an effort to perform a door-to-door search, or in an effort to look under ceiling tiles or whatever it may be. Again, it's going to be up to the professionals that are out there, as well as them methodically going through each and every area of that particular organization. And for example, if it's a hospital, they may have to go through every door. They may have to go through every bathroom, every room, every unit, etc., in an effort to make sure that everything is clear, and then the organization could go back to some type of normalcy within the upcoming days. Once again, please be patient, because it does take time to look through, especially with only limited amounts of bomb teams, as well as limited personnel that are being able to cover, for example, 200,000 square feet. It takes a lot of time in order to do so. And then be sure to have maintenance, as well as people that are training, and your training officers or educators or anything dealing with risk management, for example. Maintain the evacuation routes that are going to be clear. Review the locations that are there to ensure the safety of all your personnel within the organization. Proper lighting and a means of egress are going to be important as well. Oftentimes we forget about lights and bulbs are burned out, But when we are in a normal situation, we don't oftentimes think about lighting as one of our top priorities. But when the lights go out and you're trying to rumble, bumble, stumble, fumble along a wall and trying to find your way out in a hurry, it makes it a lot more challenging, a lot more difficult. Also understand that there's going to be smoke and fire resistance locations and these smoke and fire resistance doors. These are going to be beneficial just in case if you happen to have a chemical or a radiological dispersal agent that's there. That's going to minimize some of the smoke as well as the dust particles that are going to be associated with that. Especially if it is a blast, then those doors are going to help minimize that. That's not the end all be all for protection there, but it is going to make a little bit more of a difference for life safety. And once again, I can't emphasize enough proper training and education. Without proper training and education, the employees are definitely not going to have a better opportunity to understand what is taking place. And also they are going to hold leadership accountable for that, asking why there was minimal or no training or education pertaining to some of these circumstances there. Once again, life safety is the top priority there, and it does take a little bit of a budget in an effort to train and educate people, but their lives are at stake as well as your own if you're the training officer, and understand that you only have one chance, you only have one life, and you only have one opportunity there to make sure that everybody is going to make it out alive and be accounted for. And once again, I thank you for your attention for this particular lesson. I hope that you were able to pick up some good nuggets of information in regards to the topics that we discussed this week. I'm looking forward to next week and discussing some other areas of business continuity and recovery, etc. We have a lot to cover in the upcoming weeks in a brief period of time, but I'm certainly looking forward to our discussion boards as well as working alongside you in your academic endeavors. Blessings, and looking forward to seeing you next week.